All right, fantastic. So, welcome to class 17. I just want to let you know, guys, we have a new environment called T Forum in which you will be doing your class projects. The T Forum has a complete instance of Vista. Complete as in it actually has a complete lexicon. It has drugs, it has patients, and it has a lot of the packages set up. So what you need to do when you start working on your class project, which we talked about last week, we're gonna this is where you're gonna do it. So I talked it over with Linda, and I had to do some thinking, and I thought it's best to start the class project after Christmas and New Year's because I presume normal people will be with their families. So, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna cover. We're gonna go through our homework, and then we're gonna cover. Let's see. We're gonna cover some of the devices aspect in Vista, and I actually have a good example that we're gonna use. So let's get started. Um, I thought Tony had the best write-up, so I'm going to use his first. Here we are. So, essentially, Tony got one of the pharmacy checks routines that actually belongs to CPRS, and what's it doing is that it's actually checking to see if a patient has something called polypharmacy. Now, a patient with polypharmacy is a patient who's taking too many medications, and we're gonna see how this works. This is actually pretty simple, and I'm very glad it was a good choice for a place where we could actually work at and look at Vista code. So this is the entire routine. It's not long. So we're going to go through it line by line. So the first thing that we notice that this is actually an extrinsic function, which means it's going to return 1 or 0. And the way we find out if it's an extrinsic function or not is that if we go at the bottom, we'll notice the end of the routine ends with a quit with a value, which means that this is invoked using an expression rather than using a do. Therefore, it's an extrinsic function. So notice that we actually pass in a DFN. So this is now we're talking about Vista 101 and how to understand Vista code. DFN is the patient's internal entry number inside a FileMan. So, for example, all right. So here we actually have an example of a real patient. And notice that I said here when I did an inquire in FileMan that I want both computed fields and record number. And so the number is actually the internal enter number of the patient, and the number is actually 22. If you look at the social security number, that's a totally different number and has nothing with the actual record number of the patient inside of FileMan. So that's the record number inside of in FileMan for the patient. That's the DFN. Does that make sense, or do I need to explain it again? Okay, looks like this is working. Looks like everybody gets it. Uh, so we have a bunch of variables here, and we really don't know what they actually mean. So we have over here ORS LT, which we don't really know what that means. We could see ORENT, that could be probably entry. OR location, LOC, that's probably location. OR PIR must be parameters, and OR meds must be medications. But again, it's not very clear what this is. However, if we go to the end of the routine, again, it's a good way to figure out things. We notice that the variable ORSLT actually gives us the is the one that's used in the quit statement. Therefore, we have a reasonable assumption that ORSLT just holds the actual result of running the code. So, as a good programming practice, we don't leave our variable undefined, and we actually set it to 0, our return value. Now, okay, let's move on to the next line, and this is an interesting line. So, this says quit if not $length of DFN. And Tony's interpretation was quit if the DFN has no length. Now, that is a literal interpretation of what the MUMPS code says. But what's it really saying is quit if uh, the DFN is not valid. So DFN is the record number. It has to be a number. And so it's at least if it has at least one number in it, it's going to be quit if $length. Now, normally, if I was writing the code, I would not be doing quit if $length of DFN. I would just do quit. Let me see if I could edit this. I would do quit if not DFN. It's essentially because it's a number, and if they gave me a 0 on an empty string, it means that I'm definitely there's a problem here, because quit of $length of DFN would pass even if you passed a string for DFN. So the actual code is not quite correct, but we're gonna leave it as is. So here we're going to say essentially quit if an invalid DFN has been passed. Okay, so the next piece of the code is, okay, they're setting VA 200 to equal empty string. But notice something, guys. Is this one of the variables that got newed? It did not. However, it actually gets killed at the end. So we're gonna guess that what's happening here is that the next routine that's getting called is actually leaking some variables. And so that could be this programmer's attempt at containing the leakage. So let's talk about VA DPT. So you do not basically. I see what Tony did. He actually looked up on routine one, saw what it did. In general, all of the VA DPT routines, there's a bunch of them. But whenever you see VA DPT, essentially it gets you the patient demographics in an array called VAIN, like this. So that's by and large what it does. So the next statement, what it does is that it checks to see the contents of VAIN4. Now, I'm going to guess, given the context, that VAIN4 must be an internal entry number in a file. And it's file 42, and we can actually do a little bit of guesswork. So this is file 42. So let's go ahead and do a little guesswork here. We're going to go to FileMan. We're going to type data dictionary. We're going to use the option list. We're going to type 42. It's word location. I don't need to go any further. So it looks like VAIN4 is actual the word location, and what OR location here is getting is that it's actually getting the word location um, word location from file 42. Now there's a little thing that's a bit strange, and I haven't gone in. I haven't told you yet about how to understand what FileMan does here, but it looks like, and I'm gonna guess that this must be a pointer to the hospital location file, which is file 44. Now, this just happened to be stored in subscript 44. But in any case, we're overanalyzing it now. We're just saying, okay, this looks like in the end it's getting the pointer to the hospital location file. So now what's it doing is that it kills the leaking variable from OERR upcard VA DPT, and then here we go. Now I understand what this stands for. ORENT stands for the entity. That's the way that the parameter system works, that the CPRS runs. And what this does is that, it says concat I am either plus $G of ORLOC. What does that mean? Well, it's a bit redundant actually. Again, there's another example of where this code does something that's incorrect. Over here, we already did a $get to make sure it gets defined. There is no reason to try to protect against an undefined error once again, because by this point, it must be defined. Therefore, this could be rewritten as, and remember, we already applied the plus to convert it to a number up here. So this could just say OR lock underscore and the rest. Who knew we'd be discovering mistakes in Vista code, right? So, and the way the parameter system works, and you will not, if you've never programmed CPRS or been a CAC for CPRS, you would not know this, is that you always pass a bunch of entities and tell the system which ones it should evaluate first. So you're telling it to look at the hospital location first, and SC is actually the hospital location global. Then look at the division, then look at the system, then look at the package. And this is the call in the parameter system, and this is the parameter it's looking up. And the I here means get the internal value. Again, too much detail, but overall, it says get the value of this parameter. What's the significance of the underscore? This underscore means concatenate. Does that explain it? Or did I mean another underscore? Yeah, okay, good. So it's actually Tony did not follow this, and I asked people not to keep following the links inside the code. Just try to give a best guess on what it is. This says $$ number rx would invoke a subroutine inside this routine to get the number of prescriptions for this patient, or number of medications, and they store it in the variable OR meds. Again, with the $get, same mistake as before. You do not need to do that. You really don't. That's extra processing cycles for the computer. So again, we're going to say if OR meds is greater than OR par, set OR result. So that's O result, I see now. Equal to 1. And quit with it. Okay. Let me ask you guys, any questions? Does it make sense? We're actually able to read an entire routine that has MUMPS code in it. It wasn't that hard. Okay, good. So we're going to move on and do the next one. So let's do Linda's one. So let's start off at the very top and figure out. It's the very first line of the routine actually usually gives you some idea of what it does. And so you could see over here it says study. This is a study description for DICOM. So far so good. So this guy says it's a function, or in our terms, an extrinsic function. So that's also an extrinsic function. It says return a study description for an image. All right, that's good. So, and this is all part of the original documentation. And I was telling Linda that she lucked out because she got the routine with the most documentation in it. The input here is by value. He doesn't say by value, but since we're just passing one value, it must be by value. And then it says it returns, since it's an extrinsic function, 2 pieces, which is piece 1, the study description, and piece 2, the descriptive error message. Excuse me. So here you go. Again, part of the original routine. That's why Linda lucked out. Study description. 2 node of the image on the MAG 205. And then the name of the package with which the image is associated. Okay. Now I presume that this must be Linda's comment, right? Set the error to an empty string. And okay, that is great. That's good to do it. All right. So let's look at this. So here, if variable is undefined, set error as above and quit function, returning image as an empty string. You probably want to say returning a description as an empty string, because that's what it's returning. It's not returning the image.
The image is the variable.
No, it's when it says quit empty. You see that? Quit empty. What it's quitting is that it's quitting the function, and the function's quit value is what it says at the top is actually the study description of the image and descriptive error message. Okay, I need to get some water, guys. Just a moment. I don't know what he did. So hold on. So return return function with an empty string. All right. But so here, what Linda says is that if the variable is undefined, that is technically correct, but again, there's no point. There's really no point in us just saying if the variable is undefined. What it's really doing is that it says if the entry in file 2005 cannot be found. That's what it's really doing. So there's a file in FileMan called 2000, whose number is 2005, and that's exactly what, if you look up here, it says IN of the image on Mac 2005. Cannot be found, set error above, and quit the function. All right. So set mag R2, the to node of the image, close paren, to the value of the global mag image2. So that's correct. So that's actually correct. So, but I want you to notice something. Notice that the programmer put a $get against it. Why do you think he did that? Or she did that? Any takers? Oh, Tony is writing. Okay. All right. I think what Tony typed is correct. Is that basically what's going to happen if the actual if you remove the $get and the value didn't exist, MUMPS is gonna crash. It's gonna crash with an undefined error. $get $get's main function is to prevent you failing with an undefined error and return an empty string instead. So this is actually what the next statement is actually doing. It's actually checking to see if you got the empty string, and if you got the empty string, it's gonna return back. So basically, if you get the empty string, you will essentially quit out. Just leave this routine. Say that you have an error. Now, I am starting to notice something about this routine that's not documented. Oh, here we go. It is documented. It is. You put that in? Okay, so Linda actually discovered this. So this was actually not documented inside the routine. Notice that the programmer, whoever he or she is always setting the error variable prior to quitting. I was like, oh, that's weird. How come he's not doing not using the extrinsic function? Well, apparently not. So what's happening here is that the error here must be this variable, and if I do a search for it, it gets highlighted over here, and you could see all the different entry. That must be the error that's getting returned. And the harder we look at this, and when you're actually setting something and you quit, it's a very strong possibility that this is actually passed by reference, because if you pass it by value, what's going to happen is that it's going to get destroyed by the end of the routine, and you won't get it back. So this must be passed by reference. All right. This is so Linda's right on the money there. I don't need to explain. That's exactly correct. And here you go, same pattern. Oh, let me. And look at this, very nice. Do radiology or consult procedures And Linda says, do the following. Now, if make mag package equals 74, which means it's a radiology image. And Linda added a very good point here, and it said this is really hard to sometimes really hard to read in MUMPS code. This is a do, and after the do is a quit. So so it's gonna do this and then quit, and it's gonna get done, and so it's actually gonna exit out. So here we go. We have new the variables, and again from the original routine we have radiology report index, order record, procedure code. Yeah. And here we go, it's the 7th piece. All right, that sounds good. It's actually that must be the order record, as we could see from above. All right, now if error comes back with a value instead of an empty string, since we know that error is used globally to signal an error and it's always an empty string, we could say if an error occurred. That would be the more succinct way of putting it. Okay, nothing much here. That's pretty self-explanatory. And again, here we go. If not mag procedure. Okay, this is important. So this is important. Remember, guys, when I told you if not DFN would do the same thing as what the original programmer wrote. Here, again, he's checking for a number, and if the number isn't the, if he gets a 0 or an empty string, this is gonna be true, and we're gonna cause an error. That sounds good. And here we go. This would be the description. And oh, here we go. I could see that this programmer is either too knowledgeable or somewhat sloppy. Notice that he does not check the error variable after he exits this call, which he should. Or he should at least indicate why he's not doing that. Okay, so next thing again, same idea. You're doing packages again. So here's mag package is this or is equal to this. So notice that the original programmer could have written it like this, by the way. That have worked fine. It's the same thing, because MUMPS has this crazy left to right evaluation. And I showed you that in one of our earlier classes, but this definitely makes the code more readable. So here we go. Now, Linda's illustrating a very good point here. You in your comments, you should not repeat what the code is doing, because I can read the code. You should say if package is something like that, and that would tell me, because I can read the code that it says it's mag package. So here we go, and this is stydesc, and again we're gonna say set study description. And here we go, quit the if-do loop, that's correct. If the study, Oh, this must be a crazy for loop, a crazy loop, because it looks like I understand. We actually have to take a look at the original routine in order to understand this. But let me, uh, I want you to notice that you see each of the if statements has a do and then a quit. And therefore it's going to exit. So this is sort of the else case, except without an else. And it's basically saying if none of these conditions match above, therefore, I basically what's happening is none of these actually match. So this is what Linda should have said here, is that if none of the stuff above matches, set study description to an empty string and error to the error message. And here we go. And that's the end. Okay, questions? All right, great. So I see Manoj is not here, so I'm not going to do his routine, but we're going to do Tom's routine. Okay, so this routine actually has some good examples with stuff with some extrinsic functions and some file man stuff that it's actually doing. So uh, let's start with the file man stuff. Now I can't remember which parts of oh yeah, oh down here, that's right. So new status, nothing fancy here. Now here is here is one here's one that's actually interesting, and it says here for lock, that lock we haven't covered yet, but it should actually tell you essentially it's sort of let me explain what locks are. A lock is essentially like a red light in a lock in MUMPS. Other languages don't necessarily do it that way. A lock in MUMPS is like a red light that tells you that's basically the reason that you stop at a red light is that you have a sort of a social contract or a legal agreement, sort of, to stop at the red light. When you actually when you move your car to the red light, your car does not stop at an invisible barrier that the red light has established. It actually is just a signal. So it's just a signal, and you don't necessarily have to stop for it. So the only in MUMPS, this is sort of a red light, and in here is saying, go ahead and lock this node. We're gonna ignore the for loop for now because that's a bit crazy. I don't agree with that code. It's a bit complex. Let's just say he just did this. The programmer just did this. Let's ignore the for loop. So basically, he's gonna this. Uh, this is actually not correct, Tom. What this does is that it says, um, make sure nobody else is checking right now. That's essentially a red signal saying, okay, I'm not going to be checking right now. Make sure that if any other user ran this, that they're going to hit the red light and they're going to stop. Okay, so the next thing here says do a ping test, and uh, ping test just says here test the ping by sending a ping request. We're not going to follow it much farther. And so once you get it's an extrinsic function, so you get a value. And the next thing it says is that it actually reuses a variable, which is a bad thing, actually. It's not something I would encourage you to do. It reuses the variable uh, to file it into a file, it looks like. So ping file. So let's look at what ping file does. All right, I can't say that this is the simplest entry to actually simplest code to read, but here let's give it a try. So here is LIN and last val, and we don't exactly know what these are. Here status is plus $get of status. Again, extra code that this programmer wrote, but that's okay. He might be just protecting himself just in case a programmer just sent called this without sending anything in the parentheses. So I don't. Should I actually explain this? No, it's too hard. It's too hard. No, I will explain it. No. It's reverse dollar order. And if you remember FileMan files, they always consisted of a file, and then the file contained the file had entries and then indexes in it. So basically what this colon here is, he's saying put me between the entries and the indexes and go back one and see if I could get any entries. Now, the canonical way you're supposed to do this is with a space rather than with a colon. That will do the same thing, and it's just going to get you the last entry, which is what this is doing. So it's going to use this last entry, and then it's going to go into the last entry, internal entry number, uh, and try to get that record and get the second piece of that record. Now notice again of the $get. $get is there to prevent an undefined error. And therefore, if you use $get, it means that what if you get an undefined? Now you have to plan. I mean, what if you get an empty string? It means that the entry is not defined. Now you need to make sure that this actually gets you a valid value. So we're going to see here. So here it says if status is 0 and the entry is not defined, quit 0. Again, okay, fine. Again, I don't think I would have written it that way, but sure. If status is 0 and the last entry is defined and it was last available as well, which last available is a number. Since it's going to be a date time, it's going to be a number. So we're going to quit with 0. If status is 0 and we have an entry, but we don't have a last available time, what we're going to do is we're going to update the entry. If the status is -1, etc., we're going to create a new entry. Now, I'm not exactly sure what he's getting at, but it looks like he has some logic here to say when I'm going to create a new entry or add a new entry. Now, just a very quick run through these. Now, we're not going to cover in detail any FileMan APIs in this class, but I want to show you some APIs that the programmer is using. X over here is the output of now upcaret XLFDT, and that gets you the current time from your computer in FileMan format. And this API, file upcaret DICN, this actually lets you create a new entry inside of FileMan. Let's go down here. again with the now upcaret xlfdt, and this next API fmdiff upcaret xlfdt, this one gets you the actual difference in seconds, and here he divides it and makes it minutes. And now he does integer division so that he won't get any. He would get a whole. He would get a whole number of minutes rather than a minutes with a fraction. And this is how DIE works, and that's why most programmers don't use DIE nowadays, because it's very messy. You could see how messy this is. And then it updates it, and then it sends a message, whatever that message is. Where is it? Okay, it must be not in this routine. All right, so in the end, let's just say if it's failed, send the message that the interface is down. That's correct. And then L minus is basically, remember I told you a lock is like a red signal. This converts it back to green. And therefore, anybody who comes after you and tries to lock it again, they'll be able to do it. All right. Any questions? All righty. So we're gonna go ahead then and excuse me, go into the today's class material. All right, so today we're going to cover a few device-related concepts, and we'll see, time permitting, if we actually need to spend another class on devices or not. But for now, I think I'm just going to teach you the basics of devices and how to use them in Vista, and we're going to just leave it at that, essentially. Excuse me. There are more complex devices, such as callouts to the operating system for it to do stuff, but I'm not going to discuss these. I'm just going to leave it to you, so that if you actually want to use them, you would actually read the GTM or cache documentation, because each operating system is actually different. So let's start with the device commands, and the ones that we actually never use in our Vista code, except for one. So our device commands are open, use, and close. They are all vendor dependent, not standardized. What does that mean? Basically, an open command on GTM will not necessarily work on cache, and an open command on cache will not necessarily work on GTM. That's unfortunate, but that's the reality. So I will show you how we actually use open, use, and close on GTM. On cache, I did not consult the documentation, and I don't know what it is, to be honest. But we're just going to show you how they usually operate, so that you have an idea of how do you actually use them. And it's, in essence, it gives you an idea of overall of, how do devices and mumps work. So what we do basically is the following. You say an example is open, and we're going to go to temp, and we're going to say sam.txt. So I just opened the file on the file system. Now, notice when I write hello world, that it still writes to the screen, even though I opened a device, which is a bit crazy. You'd think that once you open a device, you're going to be writing to a device. But that's not the way it works in MUMPS. You have to use an open device before being able to write to it. So we're gonna do is type use slash temp slash sam.txt. And now notice what happens when I write hello world. Nothing happens. What's really happening is that the hello world is actually getting written out on disk. This is a new line, and then let me write bye. And then in order for me to get done, I actually have to close it. Okay, Linda has a good question. Do you have to open before you use? The answer is yes. Let's try it. Use temp slash linda.txt. Okay, that's pretty much answers that question. So I just want to show you, I'm going to get out of GTM and go to the shell. So this is my feedback from a couple of people, especially Linda. Told me last time I was too fast in getting in and out, and you didn't know which place I was in. So I'm leaving MUMPS now by typing halt, and I'm gonna use a command on the shell called cat, which prints out files, and I'm gonna check the contents of sam.txt, and you could see what it actually contains. It's exactly what I've written. So I'm going back into MUMPS. Now this is good. Uh, so let's actually this is great. Let's actually try to read back the file that we just written. So it essentially works the same way. We're gonna do open again temp sum.txt use not user, just use temp sam.txt. Now we're gonna tell it read line 1, read line 2, read line 3. Is there a third line? It didn't work. Well, apparently it thinks there is. Read line 4. Okay, now it gives me an error. So there's a very let me show you a new trick while we're doing this. You can actually switch between devices. So now we have the file open, but I don't want to close it yet. So the question is, how do you switch back to your original device? The answer is dollar principal is your original device, the one that's started the MUMPS process. So if I use dollar principal or use $P as the abbreviation, I switch back to my main line and I could write hello. So GTM has a debugging command, and I'm pretty sure Cache has one too. I don't know what it is, but GTM has something called zshow sub d, which gives you all your currently open devices. Oh, Linda has a good observation. So $P can be dollar principal or dollar piece. The answer is yes. It depends on the context. So, um, let me go back over here. Have we talked about halt and hang yet? They both have the same abbreviation as well. All right. So we use the device back, but I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna set a variable zeof equal $zeof, and then we're gonna go ahead and close the device. Now, when you close the device, it automatically switches back to dollar principal. All right. And so let's write ZEOF. Okay. Now there's a reason I actually extracted that variable out. ZEOF signifies the end of file. Again, it's non-standard. However, both Cache and GTM have it. And essentially, whenever you read the file, you actually keep reading it until you hit the $ZEOF. And so let's look at what I read back. Read write line 1, write line 2, write line 3. It's an empty string. Write line 4 should not be defined. No, it is defined because I don't know, somehow it failed, but left it defined. Okay. So just a quick review. So use a device in MUMPS, open a device, use it, read or write to it, close it. That's essentially what you have to do. Now, in Vista, you're not supposed to use the commands open and close directly because of the fact that they're non-standard. So we actually have APIs around these. So let me show you the first API that we are all very familiar. A lot of us are familiar with. Let me show you this API. So let me I'm gonna make sure I kill my symbol table. Let's see if there's anything here. I'm just gonna say kill, and there's absolutely nothing. So the most important API that we use in Vista, actually before I start, all APIs in Vista operate, all device APIs in Vista operate as follows. Essentially, they return the variable IO as the opened device, which means that Vista opens it for you. You have to use IO to use the device. To close the device, Vista also has an API for that. Okay. And the last thing is opening failure returns a variable called pop. If pop is true, then opening the device failed. All right, so that's pretty good. So let's see if we could give it a shot. So the most important API, and all of these APIs are documented in the kernel system manual. And let me see if I could get you a link to the kernel system manual. Here we are. Where's the Skype? Here it is. Okay. So the most important API, and probably the one that you're familiar with, you've seen it a million times, is that it's this one. When you do upcaret %zis, it asks you for the device. And you could pick anything over here. So we're just going to hit enter. And we're going to zero-write IO. And I want you to see your IO. So your IO over here is dev.9, and that's essentially the Linux sudo terminal session that we are running, and therefore that's what you're actually. If you are actually programming for a real device, you're just gonna do use IO, write hello world, etc. And then you're going to do the following after you're done. You're going to close the device. And how do you close a device? It's a very simple call. Do upcaret %zisc. Now, %zis has actually a lot of different ways that you could actually call it, including actually supplying the name of the printer. But essentially, I'm actually Miss Alice here today, because when I was actually troubleshooting a printer for her back when she went down to her workplace, one of the things I did was I actually did the following. What I did was do upgrade %zis. I selected the printer, and I don't know what printers I have here. Let's pretend that this is a printer. So I'm going to use something called null, which is the null device. And let's pretend that this is a printer. So what I do is use IO, write testing printer, write testing again, write new line, write testing. And then when I call per upcaret %zisc, guess what happens? The page goes and gets printed to the printer. That's an easy way for you to test the printer inside of Vista. It's basically run through these sequences. So anyways, to be honest, %zis is useful for selecting printers, but it's not the one I'm actually want you to use when you actually do work on files in Vista. That's another API. So let me write this. %zis best for selecting printers and perhaps message pipes. But there is another API to use with files. That's %zish. So the API for %zish looks as follows. And this one we're actually going to go into more detail into the other than the one in ZIS. I showed you how to use it very quickly, but I'll leave the rest for you. Rest of the experimentation for you by reading the manual. But this one we're going to cover in more detail. I'm looking for its documentation. Oops. %zish. Here we go. So here's the API. That's the actual That's the actual documentation. So what you have to do is the following. You're gonna so remember the file I actually let me see. So if I do zsystem ls of /gmp, okay. I want you to remember the file sam.txt. That's the one we're gonna open. So we're gonna say do open up caret %zish. We're gonna give this a handle. So we're gonna say file1. We're gonna say the path. It's gonna be /temp/ then comma, then the actual file name, which is this, then the mode. Now, this lets you specify either so we have to use a call called, we're just going to set it into a variable, set $zeof equal $status upcard %zish. And that essentially calls $zeof for us. Okay, thanks, Douglas. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to check ZAOF quickly. So I'm going to switch to my principal device, look at ZAOF, and then switch back to my file device. Okay, ZAOF is 0, so we're good to go. So we're going to do read line 2. Again, same thing. I check ZEOF, then check its value. Still 0. Good. I can read line 3 then. Then I check ZEOF, and now it tells me, okay, I actually finished reading the file. So now that's a signal for me to actually stop reading the file and close the device. And now remember, since I actually use the open API, there's an API in Vista to close it. So do close upcaret %zish of the handle, which is file1, and it's closed. I don't have to use $P because closing a device automatically gets me to $principal. Okay. Let me ask if you guys have any questions. We're going to do a full example using this to read the SNOMED to ICD9 conversion file right here. We're going to do it. We're really going to do it. But I just want to see if you guys understand this so far. All right. Sounds good. All righty. So, what the next thing I think so before I actually show you the full example of upcaret percent %zish, I also want to tell you about the socket devices. Um, MUMPS in general has TCP built into it. Therefore, you could actually call web services and whatnot. So, um, or you could browse websites from inside of MUMPS. I'm gonna show you a little, just go show you a very little thing that I'm gonna just do quickly, and we're gonna see whether it's gonna work or not. So before I do anything, I just need to do this because I need to know what I'm gonna send it. Oh, garbage, garbage, garbage. Okay, this is what I'm sending it. Something like this, these 4 lines. Okay, so it's sort of these 4 lines I actually need to send to Google before it actually replies to me. So this is I actually have to send these. So here's what I'm gonna do. Huh?
There you have H months.
Oh, I don't. No, that's okay. It's something with the screen. So what I'm going to do is there is an API in Vista to let you make socket connections. So this is another kind of device. The socket connections, and that API is open upcaret %zis TCP, and it accepts the 2 parameters it accepts are IP address and port. A port is a number, actually. So, if you guys know anything about the internet, the way it works is that you either connect on port 80 or port 443. We without doing some extra work, we can't connect on port 443 because it requires us to use SSL. So what we're gonna just do is connect on port 80. And again, remember, same idea. We open something, and then we write back everything. So let me see. I'm trying to think of how I'm gonna do this. So I guess I'm gonna do it in a routine. So let's give it a shot. And let's say K-band TCP. Oh, so we're gonna do open upcaret %zis TCP. Gonna do www.google.com, and then we're gonna do it on port 80. Okay, I have to go back and look at the documentation because I can't remember. CIS TCP. Okay. Use IO. Let's see if I still have this in my symbol table. Oh, yeah, I do. Here we go. Yeah, I know. I'm not sure why my cursor won't move up. Oh yeah, of course it is an invalid line tag. Okay. So we're gonna write get slash HTTP 1.1 append $C 1310, and then we're gonna write now this is the part I need to remember. Host colon google.com, and then we're gonna write this is the part I'm trying to remember. I guess this is good enough. It should tell. At least Google would give us an error message from this. So we have to send another new line, and this should be this, and then here we have to write this, which means this has a special meaning now. This means flush content, and we are going. Then Google is going to reply to us, and now we're going to have to actually read it back. For I equal, okay, let's just do new I. For I equal 1, step 1, read x sub I with a timeout of 1. And quit if, now this part I'm not exactly sure about, but I'm gonna take a guess because I think it uses the same thing. Status upcard %zish. Quit. All right, I must say this must be a very crazy routine. So let's see. Save. All right, here we go. Let's give it a shot. Oh. All right, they did not like that for sure. Oh, that's because of VPE. So set dollar airtrap equal to break. Set. No. All right, guys. By the way, if this doesn't work in the next 3 minutes, there's no point to pursue again. Set dollar $ZT equal empty. Let's set this again. Oh, what's the label that's undefined? Oh, I did not even close the connection. That's so stupid. All right, let me fix this. Okay, I must be doing something really stupid, and I'll find out what it is. ZIS TCP. Oh, it's not open. I made a mistake. It's call. Huh? Okay, I'm just gonna Control C. Let's just zero it X. No! Okay. Let's just say that this experiment was a failure, but I got it to work at some time, so I can't remember why, but at least it gives you the general idea. This usually works much better with a straight TCP server, but little work on it and knowing when to quit, you're actually gonna get it to work. So, alrighty. I did say we're gonna try to load the SNOMED file today, so let's actually do that. So I'm back here. I actually got the SNOMED file from the National Library of Medicine. So I'm gonna go ahead and unzip it. Now we have two files, and I'm just gonna use the one-to-one. So I actually need its full path, so I actually know what I'm gonna load into MUMPS. All right, so I'm taking this into my clipboard, or at least writing it down, back to forum. So we're gonna work on a routine called sorry, GVEMS. Oh. Here we go. Let's do open upcard %zish of, let's see, we're going to call it file 1. Here's the path without the last part. Now the last part for the file name. And we're going to just put it as read only. All right. And what I typically do is I would say new pop. I'm going to say if pop write cannot open file. Then I use IO, which is the actual variable that will contain my device. And then since the file is really long, I'm just going to read it in a for loop. And I have to keep testing whether I need to quit every single time inside the for loop. So I'm going to say, here's for. I'm going to say new x here because I'm going to use x for the variable. So read x. Quit if $$ upgrade %zish open close paren. Do. Now by this point, I've read by this point I've read x and I checked whether it's at the end of the file. Therefore, x should actually contain a value for me. So, and one thing I actually forgot is one, I need 2 spaces after the 4, by the way. Oh, thank you. You got it. You saw it, Douglas. Good job. This, that's good. So I actually was thinking I'm going to load the file into a global. I'm going to call, I was going to say set up caret kban snow for snowmed. I was going to put just put an I equal to x. However, I have not defined I as a counter. So let me do that. Say I, and for I equal 1, step 1. Therefore, I is going to start at 1, is going to be incrementing. So I'm going to set kban snow sub I equal to x. And do I need to do anything else? Not really. Oh, actually, there is one little thing I should do before I do anything else. That is, I need to, because I'm going to run this routine several times during debugging it, I should actually kill the actual global bit before I actually do anything. So I'm going to say kill kban SNO, remove old data. Oh, and here's, I see, and I made another mistake. If pop write cannot open file, quit. We did not want to continue if this is not work, if we couldn't open the file. Use IO. All right, there's actually one thing missing. Who wants to tell me what it is? I just noticed it. It's very simple. All right, remember, I open a file, I use a file. What do I do after I use a file? Close the file. Good. So you have to do close up %zish of file 1, and I'm done. Here we go. Oh, okay. I think it worked. Let's see. All right. Good job. I loaded the SNOMED conversion file into Vista. This is good. So you notice I just zeroed something from 1 to denote the file from 1 to 5 because I'm pretty sure the file has like 1,000 lines or something. It's gonna take over the screen. So let me print this. And it's very small. It's a very small file, but just gives you an idea of how to read a file into Vista. And I hope basically that all is self-explanatory. If you have any questions, let me know right now. All right. I take it there are no questions. So before we break, here's the plan for the next few weeks. There's no homework today. Yay! And this way, you get the next 2 weeks off with nothing to worry about. If you need to catch up with stuff, that will be the time to do it. When you come back, I would like you to start on your semester project. So far, I have Linda mentioned to me what she wants to do. I have Tom and Tony told me what they want to do. I haven't had anything from Rob, Jignesh, Alice, Manohar, Manoj. And so if you guys are okay with the stuff I'm going to assign, that's fine. There were two things. One is using Open Info button, and that one is good. All that you're gonna do over there is you're going to check the patient's records for specific items and construct a URL. And all you're going to do is just write the URL to the screen. So it's mostly that one is going to be dollar ordering, dollar data, and string concatenation. The other project is actually loading SNOMED, this table that we just load, but actually putting it into FileMan. You're gonna put you're gonna load FileMan. You're gonna load this, and you're actually gonna look up in the ICD9 file each entry that got loaded, and you're gonna put the actual new entry next to then SNOMED code that it corresponds to next to it. And so that is going to involve reading a file, dollar order, constructing a temporary global, doing sort of some lookups in FileMan and some lookups here and setting a FileMan global. So these are essentially the two semester projects, and basically, unless you have something of your own, have your pick about with one of these. All right, Jignesh is typing something. All right, Jignesh, you could actually work on that if you wish. That'd be fine. That would work. That would work very well. So, all right, that's it, everybody, and I will see you in not next week, not the week after, but in 3 weeks. Instructions for accessing T Forum, I'm going to send that to you maybe tomorrow after today, and and if you would like to start on your project, you certainly can before uh, on the break. So, and you could start it over there. And let me see. Before we break, I'm trying to think. Is it time for us to have a little office hours for doing the project? I'll put out my time. I'll give some time maybe on Thursday and Friday. And if you want to actually start working on in T Forum on your project, I'll be happy to help you get started. So, anyways, that's it, everybody. Have a good night and have a happy holiday. Stay away from those computers.